and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tamicia Marie if you are new here, and on this channel we talk about turning your dream life into your present reality and how to look good while doing it. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? You obviously clicked on this video because you're interested in fashion discourse, fashion DIY, styling, bettering your life, and even spirituality. So therefore this channel is for you, so you should just subscribe to the family. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to just do that. You did it? Okay, great. Now we can get to the video. I'm super excited to talk about the Abercrombie and Fitch documentary. As soon as I saw the trailer for it, I was like, I'm watching that. There's no buts about it, period, point blank. And it finally dropped this past Monday on April 19th. I'm gonna be covering the Abercrombie and Fitch documentary from two perspectives. The first is gonna be like a business and marketing perspective, and the second is gonna be a consumer and like interpersonal perspective where I share my personal thoughts and opinions about content that was in the documentary. So first, I just wanna preface like what my positionality is and why I even care about sharing my thoughts and comments on this documentary. So I'm a professional marketer. I got a BA in communication studies with minors in business administration and African American studies, blended all of that together, did internships for a career in marketing. As well, I am a budding fashion entrepreneur. I'm very interested in starting my own fashion company, hopefully sooner rather than later, but that is in the works within the next few years. So this documentary is a blend of both. You get to see the rise and kind of fall of a fashion business who use marketing as their primary form of driving sales. And they did this pre-digital era, so pre-social media. I just feel like studying what the OGs of marketing were doing before they even had social media at their disposal to build a company to like being a billion-dollar company is just like so crazy. And obviously I want to watch this documentary to learn for myself as a case study in marketing and share my thoughts with you and anybody else who's interested in fashion discourse. So I really care about what's going on in the fashion industry, the fashion world, past and present. So please use the comment section to drop any thoughts or opinions you have about the marketing perspective or the interpersonal perspective of this video, because I want to have a discussion in the comments. I think that there's a lot of people in the world who are really interested in fashion discourse, but they feel like they don't know enough about fashion to actually have an opinion. But I want this channel and any of my videos to be a place where you can have this space to share your opinions, even if you didn't get a degree in it, you've never worked in the field, like you have something to say and you have your own unique thoughts and opinions that other people can benefit from. So that's my background and kind of tied to this documentary. And I hope you'll use the comment section to share your thoughts and opinions. I can't wait to reply back. As well, I use my Instagram account, which is the same as my channel name, Tamicia Marie, to have discussions about fashion, culture, music, what's going on in society. I run polls on my Instagram account, so follow me on there if you're interested in engaging in discussion there as well. So to get started on the business and marketing commentary, you can watch this video if you haven't seen the documentary yet, or if you refuse to see the documentary because you have really negative thoughts and opinions about Abercrombie and Fitch. That's totally fine. You can still watch this video, you can still comment. I'm gonna give some context to all the things that I have opinions about, so you'll know a little bit about what they were talking about in the documentary, even if you haven't seen it or don't wanna watch it. To get started, the owner of L Brands, his name is Lex Wessner, he decided to buy Abercrombie and Fitch because it was a failing brand and he wanted to revamp it. He was having trouble revamping Abercrombie and Fitch, which is when he brought in the CEO of Abercrombie, Mike Jeffries. Mike Jeffries was the previous CEO of a women's wear like business apparel brand called Abbott and Alcott, or Alcott and Abbott, one of the two. So that brand essentially failed. He was like a failed CEO. Lex brought him into the brand. He was like, I have the next big thing. I want you to be a part of it and help you kind of like redeem yourself. So his formula for how to make Abercrombie and Fitch's business model successful was to use heritage, elitism, sex, and exclusivity to make profit. He used these terms and like these ideas from probably what he was seeing in the market, his own business experience, Lex's business experience, revamped it, made it his own. He was described as like a mad genius. He didn't care what anyone else was doing. He had tunnel vision in getting Abercrombie and Fitch to be a successful brand. And if you've watched my previous videos on delusional optimism, you want to kind of be like Mike Jeffries in the sense that you're not listening to the naysayers. You know what you want, you're gonna go for it, you're really clear on your vision, and you have what it takes to get there. So they call him a mad genius, I'm calling him a delusional optimist. Abercrombie and Fitch's marketing. Let's get into the heart of it. Abercrombie and Fitch's marketing strategy can be broken up between like pre-consent decree, pre-lawsuit, and post-consent decree, post-lawsuit. While their marketing strategy didn't really change heavily pre and post lawsuit, I just want to share the distinction about what happened pre, what happened post. So breaking down Mike's 4 terms for success. Abercrombie and Fitch was a blend between what Mike saw doing well in the market. So Calvin Klein was the first brand that blended youth culture with sex. He also looked at Ralph Lauren, which is selling like American prep. So he blended the two of those things together to create Abercrombie and Fitch. As stated in the documentary, Abercrombie and Fitch was aspirational. They sold a dream. They sold the picture perfect view of what an all-American youth looked like, and people wanted to be there. If you weren't wearing Abercrombie, you weren't cool. It gives everybody something to aspire to if you desire to be a part of that in culture. This is also important to note because at the time, it was cool to dress like everybody else. It was cool to be a carbon copy, to do what other people were doing. So Abercrombie and Fitch was really leaning into this heavily all or nothing, you're one of us or you're not one of us mentality. This matters because they weren't selling clothes. And now you might be thinking, yes, they were. They were selling t-shirts, they were selling jeans, no. Abercrombie and Fitch was selling a narrative and people were buying into that narrative. That narrative was funneled through the product of clothing, if that makes sense. Abercrombie and Fitch sold belonging. They sold coolness, sex appeal, confidence. They sold an ideology rather than I'm selling a t-shirt. From a business perspective, this is really, really smart for marketing because you want your brand to be popular in one of 2 ways. So the first is to become, and I hope I'm saying this right, a proprietary eponym. So what that means is, and I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I get this right, because I know it is in my head, but I want to be able to explain it clearly. So proprietary eponyms are when a product's generic brand becomes so popular, the public begins to associate or title that specific product to the brand. For example, you say, pass me that Kleenex. Kleenex is the brand, but you want a facial tissue. Or just Google it when you really need, go do an internet search, or pass me the Post-it note. Post-it is a brand, Google is a brand, same thing. The second option is to have a narrative that's so strong, people buy into it, which is what Abercrombie and Fitch did. Selling a narrative was really smart for Abercrombie because they realized that they could get the average person to buy into their dream because it was so aspirational, but still had that sense of it's achievable. It's within my reach. So Abercrombie knew you couldn't be the next Brad Pitt, you couldn't be the next Angelina Jolie, but you could be the next Abercrombie and Fitch model, and that was their niche. So with their marketing and with their recruiting, they were basically doing influencer marketing like before influencer marketing was influencer marketing. So for their marketing, they're using small town guys who would be the same people shopping their product to be in their campaign. Using the top dogs at each college campus. So whether you hated them or whether you liked them, they were popular on campus. People are following what the football quarterback is doing. The rest of the school is gonna start buying Abercrombie if they're wearing Abercrombie. It was genius marketing. And the craziest thing about this was they were making so much money selling clothes, but their models were half naked. You have to be selling a good ass dream to not even be marketing your product in your campaigns, in your commercials, in your billboards. These people had no clothes on, but they were selling Abercrombie t-shirts. Either you wanted to be an Abercrombie model or you wanted to date an Abercrombie model. So that was context around marketing for Abercrombie and Fitch. But I have a few more details that I just want to add to and break down why their marketing was actually so successful. As I stated before, Abercrombie and Fitch wasn't a net new idea. They looked at what was popular in the market and they repurposed it and repackaged it for their own brand. And specifically looking at that time in history, they used all the negative aspects of American culture to their benefit, which made their brand so successful because at the time, it was okay to lean into everything that was negative about American culture. Virgil Abloh quote that I think is very spot on to describe what Abercrombie and Fitch did for their marketing. Virgil says, "My greatest design tool personally is to look at what a genre is doing and make it 3 to 5% different. In a way, it's trolling. And honestly, it may have been trolling, but it works. When you give customers something that they're familiar with, but you find a way to put your own spin on it, you give yourself the room to grow and be new as an artist, but you also are giving customers a base, a foundation to conceptualize and compartmentalize your idea. If your brand is too net new, too avant-garde, too out there, only people who are willing to take risks and spend money on that risk are going to be the people wearing and purchasing your items. Let's just look again at Mike's formula for Abercrombie and Fitch. He used exclusion, whiteness, and thinness as the foundation for Abercrombie and Fitch, and at that time, it was popular to exclude, whiteness was superior, and being thin is what everyone was striving for. That's what society deemed perfect, beautiful, cool at the time. So if we break down exclusion, as a country, we have a long history of excluding people. America is an individualist country, we have an us versus them mentality, and we demonize the other. We make anyone who is different, who is other from what we view to be the norms of society for American culture. We tell them, we force them to assimilate. Look at how people of color are treated, look at how non-Christians are treated, look at how people who aren't able-bodied are treated, the list goes on. When you exclude people, you create a very clear visual about who is in the in-group and who is in the out-group. As a result, people are either going to try to assimilate and become a part of the in-group, or they're gonna reject that and go create their own new thing where they can be accepted. Either way, it gives everybody something to aspire to. So even if you didn't want to be a part of Abercrombie and Fitch's vision, you were going to try and create something that was equally as superior, so you're still aspiring to what they are and the level of prestige that they have. With whiteness, it's almost self-explanatory. Being white was right. White supremacist values were at the core of Abercrombie and Fitch. It's in the core being of American culture, of American history, and across the world, being white is right in a lot of countries. The closer you can associate yourself with whiteness, the better off you are. With thinness, Kate Moss's infamous quote is probably the best way to explain why being thin was so in during that time period. Kate Moss said, "Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels." In the fashion industry and models, basically being anorexic, being so skinny, they're perpetrating this idea that skinny is what everyone should strive for. And as a result, fat phobia was rampant and it hasn't gone away. Don't let the 2010 IG baddie and the 2020 BBL era fool you. Body norms change over time. So while that's in for right now in our culture right now, thinness is always going to be the status quo. Being thin is always going to be acceptable no matter what time period we're in. Even with the changes leaning towards being more diverse and being more acceptable of different body sizes, fat phobia is still something that we struggle with as a culture. The next way to break down their marketing is through mall culture. So at that time, everyone went to the mall. You went to the mall with your family, with your friends. That was the cool place to hang out, to pass time. And since then, mall culture has definitely been on the decline. Malls are not the hub that they once were for social gatherings. So it might be hard to imagine what that was like for Gen Z and anyone who's younger than Gen Z. I don't even know if we've gotten there yet. But to know what was cool, you had to go to the mall to find out for yourself. So Abercrombie and Fitch's physical stores were an experience. Abercrombie and Fitch understood the importance of optimizing customer touchpoints. A customer touchpoint is every place a customer can interact with your brand and become familiar with it, recognize it. So they begin to develop brand loyalty. So for example, that includes the typography that you use, your brand colors, any slogans you may have, etc. For Abercrombie and Fitch's physical stores, they hit on 4 major senses to create a whole body experience that people would have when they entered the Abercrombie and Fitch stores. So, for sight, you saw 2 half-naked men outside the Abercrombie and Fitch store. As well, Abercrombie and Fitch had brown shutters on all the windows in the stores, so you couldn't look inside to see what was going on in the store. You had to physically go into the store to know what Abercrombie and Fitch was selling, what they were doing, and you were probably seeing the dim lights in Abercrombie and Fitch, so you couldn't tell what the hell was going on. It probably looked like a rave inside there. This was a way to drive foot traffic into your store. The second sense is sound. Abercrombie and Fitch had music going like it was a rave. The documentary stated that they have pulsating nightclub beats constantly going in Abercrombie and Fitch. It was a place that people socialized in. So you went into Abercrombie and Fitch to talk, to hang out, like it was just a vibe. Like people would just go there to chill. The next sense is smell. Abercrombie and Fitch has a very intense cologne smell, which is very smart because again, it's optimizing the customer touch point. If you have sight, if you have sound, might as well have smell. You want to intoxicate the person who's coming in because it's, again, creating a full body experience. Every time you go to an Abercrombie & Fitch, you know what to expect. You're becoming very familiar with what they're selling as a brand. The last sense that they used was touch. So of course you're touching the clothing to see how it feels, but I'm sure people were probably touching the models, feeling their washboard abs or whatever. Again, if you can go to a store and touch on fine men, it's gonna definitely impact the customer experience that you're having. Abercrombie & Fitch was a brand that was okay with objectifying men, so I'm sure they integrated that into their marketing strategy. So the next part of their marketing strategy is micromanagement. The documentary states that Mike Jeffries was a micromanager like no other. Everything had to be folded properly, everything had to look a certain way, the lighting had to be right, and the people had to look good. Mike Jeffries was not okay with ugly people working in the store. And to do quality control, he would show up unannounced. And if you were the manager and you had ugly people on schedule, it was a wrap. You were gonna need to fire those people, cut their hours, do whatever you had to do, and get it right. Because the next time he showed up, he did not wanna have the same mistake. To Mike Jeffries, having ugly people in the store essentially messed up the customer touch point of sight. They were no longer associating aspiration with Abercrombie & Fitch because an ugly person was like disrupting the vision that they had for Abercrombie & Fitch. As a marketing strategy, he kind of had a point because you want to make sure that everything is consistent. And if your brand is that we have hot people working for us, you can't have ugly people working for you. Now, do I think this is right? No, this is not my personal opinion. Again, this is just from a marketing standpoint. As a business owner, he was consistent and he was dedicated, and he optimized his customer touch points at every part he could. So now we understand what they were doing for their marketing strategy. Abercrombie & Fitch was on the rise. Abercrombie & Fitch was doing so well, it eventually became a billion-dollar company. They went on to create derivatives of their brand, Hollister, which was centered around the California dream, and Abercrombie & Fitch Kids. So essentially, Abercrombie & Fitch had a monopoly on the lifestyle fashion market. In the documentary, a woman states that she was a new employee of Abercrombie & Fitch, and somebody from HR told her that Abercrombie & Fitch was doing so well that you could write A&F in dog shit, slap it on a baseball cap, and sell it for $40. That's how good the brand was. And I was just too outdone because as a brand, you want to get to that level where you have people standing you so hard, they'll buy anything you put out. Abercrombie & Fitch was not a brand that aligned with celebrities. They were hustling so hard to get their brand to where it was, which is why it was so admirable that she could say that and that their numbers backed it up. In today's culture, I'm not sure that there is a brand that is so strong you can make that same claim. I think that there are brands that are associated with celebrities or influencers that would have that same stand culture. For example, Kanye West. Kanye West can put out something that the public hates. They're like, why would you buy that? Why would you sell that? But his fans and his followers love him so much, they stand him so hard that they're gonna go out and buy his stuff. They don't care what anyone else has to say. Now, some people can make the argument that Kanye West actually does create really great clothing, that he pushes the envelope. Great, awesome. He has some merit to his brand. He's also a mega celebrity. Let's apply that to, let's say, an influencer who does not have experience in fashion, not the same creative angle as, say, Kanye West would, but they're selling out their merch or they're selling out whatever product they launch. And this is just wild because no tea, no shade. There are influencers, there are celebrities, whatever, who put out stuff that is literally the most basic thing I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing unique about what they're putting out that differs really in any drastic way from what's already available in the market, but because of who they are and because of how loyal their fan base is, they're gonna sell out. And that just goes to show how strong stan culture still is. So moving into post-consent decree marketing or post-Abercrombie & Fitch lawsuit marketing. In the documentary, Abercrombie & Fitch is a super white company. A part of their lawsuit was that they were discriminating against people of color, firing them simply for being people of color. And that did not change after the lawsuit. Abercrombie & Fitch's upper management did not change. It stayed primarily white. What they did was they tried to increase diversity at the entry level because that's where they had the most visibility. As the recruiter in the documentary, Jose Sanchez, says, there was a glass ceiling for people of color in the Abercrombie & Fitch company. You could scale to a certain point, but it would stop because you are a person of color. So to continue having white people be the forefront of their brand and be consistent with their brand marketing, they implemented new language. So they called people who worked at the front of their stores models, and people who worked in the back of their stores impact workers. Who usually filled those roles? White people filled the model roles, people of color worked in the back and were impact workers. They were not seen really to anybody who was shopping in the store. Therefore, they were able to maintain their brand consistency and find a loophole to making diverse changes because of the lawsuit. And unfortunately, this still happens today. There are a ton of companies that say that they're a champion for diversity. D&I is at the heart of our company, it's at the heart of our mission, and you only see diversity at the entry level. Companies will embrace diversity to a point, to a glass ceiling. The boardrooms do not change that much, and if they do, they usually tokenize people. So as time went on, Abercrombie and Fitch started becoming a white hot brand. And what this essentially means is that your brand is so popular, your brand is number one, it's on the top, everyone is invested in your brand, and when you go so hard, you're gonna crash just as hard. You don't want your brand to run white hot because that means that your brand does not have enough longevity. Your brand is the trendiest thing right now, and as we know, all trends fade at some point. Here's an example of your brand running white hot. During the pandemic, there was a really big shift towards supporting Black-owned businesses. As well, entrepreneurship was on the rise, and being a business owner, escaping the 9-to-5 were all really popular topics during the pandemic because people got laid off. So there was a rise in new Black-owned businesses, but they didn't have a marketing strategy outside of being a Black-owned business. They could not differentiate themselves from what they were selling versus what was pre-existing in the market. So your marketing strategy cannot be, I sell t-shirts and I'm a Black-owned business, so you should support me. Being a Black-owned business is a characteristic that can aid your business, but it should not be the sole foundation in which you base your marketing strategy off of. So those businesses that were riding the wave of everyone shopping Black-owned right now, that's a white hot trend and it's eventually gonna phase out. Around the mid-2010s, so 2014, 2015, 2016, Abercrombie and Fitch started to decline. A lot of news in the press about Abercrombie and Fitch just being a terrible place to work. It was not diverse, it was racist, it was this, it was this, it was this. It happened because at that time there was a societal shift. Our values as a culture shifted in the United States. Exclusion was not cool anymore. Exclusion was not tolerated. Diversity was now the name of the game. Abercrombie and Fitch was not making any strides to adjust to the new societal norms. They dug their heels into exclusion, into whiteness, into thinness, and that's what ultimately was leading to all their bad press. So could Abercrombie and Fitch have predicted the societal shift? In a lot of ways, no, because Abercrombie and Fitch was built on the status quo of American culture. It didn't have any foresight that whiteness, exclusion, and thinness would even phase out, or if that was even a possibility. I think every company should have a trend forecaster or have somebody with the insight who can do trend forecasting to keep an eye and a pulse on what's new, what's hot, what's fresh in culture and in the industry, so when things do shift, you're not falling behind. Now again, this was pre-social media, so having access to the internet and having access to social media has helped. And the final part about the Abercrombie and Fitch marketing strategy that I want to speak on is their big turnaround to finally embracing diversity. And that can be attributed to the new CEO, Fran Horowitz, and everybody who began working at Abercrombie and Fitch, maybe after she got hired, or people who were already in the company, but they were starting to get on board with new visions and new ideas about how the company could be ran. Fran Horowitz said that their strategy was to turn the music down and the lights up and start listening to people. They're no longer about fitting in and maintaining a status quo. They wanted to be diverse, have different models, and have different voices and points of view recognized within their brand. And as someone in the documentary states, even though they were a company that was sitting on top for so long, it was pre-social media. They probably had just as many people who love them hate them. But those people who hated Abercrombie and Fitch simply didn't have a platform to share their thoughts and opinions. What I find interesting though is that Abercrombie and Fitch is now a brand that's diverse and welcomes everybody, but was once founded on exclusion. Exclusion had a very crisp pipeline to being aspirational. I wonder if diversity has the same pipeline to being aspirational. Someone in the documentary states, can you really sell diversity with a V-neck? So if diversity is the new narrative that you're going for, sell that narrative so clearly that your products align with it. This is a a question for brands outside of Abercrombie and Fitch, and this makes me wonder if every brand can sell diversity. How are you going to find your own unique selling proposition for diversity? What makes your brand diverse and different than what's already being offered in your current market? I wonder if brands can be exclusive to a certain point, and after that, you have to begin being diverse. If you want to be mainstream, you must be diverse. If you're okay with being a small independent designer, you can be as exclusive as you want. Let's say you make clothing for women, but you don't have plus sizes. You're gonna reach a ceiling because not everyone can wear your clothes. So if you wanna be mainstream, you need to start offering plus sizes. You know what I mean? I still have a lot of lingering questions from the documentary because I felt like they gave us really in-depth, intense backstory about how they became this white hot brand, but when it came time to the turnaround, it was very rushed. I want to know how you turn the brand around. Like, I want to know the ins and outs. I want to know, was there DEI training? Did you go to conferences? Did you have speakers? What does your recruitment strategy look like now? What does your marketing look like now? Are you just checking boxes? Like, I have so many questions, and I feel like they didn't answer that for me. At Fran, I want to know your secrets. So anyways, that's the end of part 1 about the Abercrombie and Fitch documentary. Look out for part 2 about the consumer perspective and interpersonal perspective, where I share more of my own personal thoughts and opinions about it. So thank you so much for tuning into this video, and please subscribe to the channel because I have a lot more interesting content.